Well, let's bring in Peter Boockvar. Appreciate Megan joining us. He is the Chief Investment Officer of Bleakley Financial Group. He's also a CNBC contributor. Peter, thanks for joining us. Megan brought up a number of good points. I guess the first one I'd love to ask you about is Austin Goolsby's concerns about what's going on with tariffs and if an increase in tariffs will also potentially lead to new inflation. We get PPI and CPI out next week. Are you concerned about that at all, or do you think we sort of quelled this beast somehow, some way for now?
We have not quelled this beast. Also of importance next week is import prices, because import prices are sort of the first touch of those tariffs. In April, import prices, ex-food and energy, rose 0.5 month-over-month. In May, it rose another 0.4. So that's actually the number that I'm specifically watching for. The key with inflation right now is inflation is here with tariffs. It's just a question of who eats it. Those companies that have pricing power means that consumers are going to eat it. Those companies that do not have pricing power means that companies are going to eat it via a cut in their profit margin. And we saw that clearly with what Conagra and Helen of Troy said yesterday. Helen of Troy said this summer they are raising consumer prices 7 to 10%. Now, whether it sticks or not, we'll have to see, but they're going to try to. On the other hand, Conagra has much less pricing power, and they said their costs between commodity and labor inflation, in addition to steel and aluminum in terms of their packaging, their costs are going up 7%. So the inflation's here. It's just a question of where it is along the supply chain.
And who can handle it? I mean, we also heard from Levi yesterday, and they basically said, look, we can mitigate almost all of this. I think they only plan for maybe a 2 to 3% increase. And they said if they raise prices, it will only be on some select items. So then doesn't that sort of start to separate the winners from the losers? Maybe it's not a one paintbrush sort of paints everyone the same color.
Exactly. It's the pricing power aspect that will determine whether one's margins suffer or whether the consumer's pocketbook suffers. But Levi's that's able to absorb it, well, there's somebody else in the supply chain that can't, and that Levi's is pushing back against. So someone is still eating that tariff along the Levi's supply chain, but because of their presence in apparel, they're able to push it off onto somebody else.
Hey, Peter. And it was a fascinating week because, of course, when we get the Vietnam tariffs, we had a conversation around here and with a top-ranked analyst who said, you know what, I don't love the number, but it's actually a relief. It's a relief because and we also have the ability to model out and some of that. But you spend a lot of time focused on commodities. You spend on global macro that often dictates, I think, your investment themes on picking stocks and bottom up. Is copper meaningless? Because I think for people that aren't focused on this, it could just be a lot of noise listening to LME squeezes and things that are going on with shipments. But copper prices have such a major input component, and that's independent even before we talked about tariff squeeze. Are you worried about that? And again, if we look at commodities and we look at what's going on with base metals and industrial metals, prices are going higher.
Exactly. And just to quantify that, because I just checked, as of today's close, the CRB Raw Industrials Index rose to match its level last seen in March of this year, which was the highest level since January 2023. And it's not just copper. Silver, as you had on the screen before, highest level since 2011. Platinum is up about 30% over the past couple of months. So there is a global rise in industrial metals, and I can't argue that there's this big spurt of demand. It's people trying to get their hands on these metals ahead of potential tariffs, and understanding that these critical minerals are very important in now a growing multipolar world where everyone wants to have their own stash of it. But unfortunately, whether it's demand or not, it's still higher prices that's going to flow through the inflation stats. Again, whether it's eaten by the consumer or not, it's still going to flow through the supply chain. And to Goolsby's comment, yeah, he wants to see how this plays out, as do other members on the Fed.